right, everybody, we're going to jump into the next session with Sharon Reich, and just a couple things to bring to your attention. So before last session, I mentioned attestations for guardians and conservators will be sent out via DocuSign at the end of or in that last session of the day today. If you are here with the Washington State Bar Association requesting credit or dual credit, what you'll want to do, so over on the platform, there's a welcome video tab on the right hand side. Right to the left of that, there's a drop down tab where you'll be able to click on request WSBA credit. And so right next to that welcome video, in between the welcome video and the leaderboard tab, is a little drop down where you can request credit, and we'll submit that on your behalf. And so this is our last session before lunch, and so we're grateful to have Sharon Reich here with us today. Sharon Reich is a senior trusted advisor for EWGA Incorporated, where she works with clients to implement and administer special needs trusts. Sharon has over 27 years of experience in the trust industry, with an added expertise in providing services to the senior and disabled population. Sharon speaks throughout the community to educate and promote awareness of special needs and special needs trusts. Sharon earned her finance degree from the University of Central Florida and is an honor graduate of Canon Financial Institute Trust School. She obtained her designation as a certified trust and financial advisor in 1998 and as a certified senior trust advisor in 2011. And so it's my pleasure to pass things over to you, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Luke, and thank you for having me today. We are going to talk about disability benefits. Social Security has two types of disability benefits, actually three total, primarily SSDI and SSI. So it's very important as you work with your clients and your wards that you understand what the differences are, because they're very different programs, and the benefits that come with them are very different. At EWGA, because we manage special needs trust, we live and breathe government benefits. All of our clients are on some sort of Medicaid generally, and sometimes they are on the Social Security disability benefits also. So that's basically what we do here at EWGA is manage special needs trust. Our primary business is pooled trust, but we have other types of special needs trust also. By the end of the presentation, it is my hope that you will understand the differences between the SSDI and SSI programs, who can qualify, and what are the requirements to be eligible to qualify for these benefits. What other benefits come with each program, and what happens when you turn 18. And sometimes a client is going to be on SSI and then change or convert over to SSDI. That's a very important thing to understand. So just remember, I am not an attorney, but so this is general information for you. We have a lot of slides here with reference materials for you, and I have shared this with Luke, so happy to get this to anybody that needs it. There's Social Security website has a lot of resources that are actually very good. The SSA.gov disability has a lot of publications. And the Blue Book is your listing of impairments for both adult and childhood disability. There's something called compassionate allowances that we will talk about today. The Red Book is a good reference regarding employment-related provisions for the disability. So that's a very handy thing to be able to refer to sometimes. The Program Operations Manual is what the Social Security Administration uses. when they process claims for benefits, and when we manage special needs trusts, a lot of the rules that we have to abide by are actually in the POMs. Survivor benefits are important to understand, and the SSA fact sheet, that's a great PDF that you can get there. It tells you what the current SSI benefits are, what lots of information, and it comes out once a year, right towards actually towards the end of the year, I think, for the following year. So that has a lot of really good information, and I would encourage you to go ahead and look at that. So let's start out by talking about the general two programs. Social Security Administration is going to be the agency that determines eligibility. SSDI is Social Security Disability Insurance. It's also known as Title II. SSI is Supplemental Security Income, also known as Title 16. So the basic of each, you're always going to have a medical diagnosis of disability. So that's the first thing when you apply to Social Security. For whatever reason, the person thinks they can, can no longer work, they've gotten into an accident, or potentially they have a developmental disability, those types of things, or a medical condition where they can no longer work. They're going to apply to Social Security, and a medical diagnosis is going to be done. Then they are going to look at the work history. Do you have enough credits to be considered to be insured? Going to talk about what that means. If the answer to that is yes, then you would be put on the SSDI program, and the benefits would be based on your work record. You also receive Medicare after 2 years. That's the program, the medical benefit that we can get, when we're 65, Medicare, but it takes 2 years to get that. Under the SSI program, if you have when you get your medical diagnosis, if you have not worked enough to be considered insured, then they're going to say, well, okay, we're going to potentially give you the SSI benefit, but you have to meet certain financial qualifications. So SSI is a needs-based program. You can only have $2,000 in countable assets to qualify for this. So the government will give you a certain dollar amount every month if you meet that qualification, and you are entitled to Medicaid as long as you receive $1 in SSI. So not Medicare, but Medicaid. So very different programs. Let's talk about what the disability definition is. This is for 18 and older. The government is going to look at the inability to engage in substantial gainful activity. And that has to be because of a medical, determinable, physical or mental impairment that's expected to either result in death or last for at least 12 months. So basically, you have a medical condition that is expected to either result in death or last at least 12 months. And you cannot work in what they call substantial gainful activity. So we will talk about what that means. You can work a little bit. So this is how Social Security actually goes about the disability determination. Are you working now? Substantial gainful activity is defined as making $1,550 a month. If you make that or more, then you are working in substantial gainful activity. That number is higher if you're blind. So if you're working less than that, then you would pass that question. Is your condition severe? So is it going to limit your ability to do basic work, related activities for at least 12 months, standing, sitting, remembering, etc.? Is your condition found on the list of disabling conditions? There are some conditions known as compassionate allowances that are automatically pretty much considered you're disabled if you have these conditions. And there are quick disability determinations for some types of conditions, so it will speed up the process. Social Security is also going to consider, can you do the work you did previously? And can you do any other type of work? So medical conditions, age, education, transferable skills, all of those things will be considered when they're looking at, are you disabled? Unfortunately, a very high percentage of people get denied the first time they apply as not being disabled. At that point, a lot of people hire attorneys, disability attorneys, to help them through the process of making an appeal. I'm going to talk a little bit more about working while having a disability. We get a lot of questions like that. It is possible to work while and still be considered to be disabled. Again, these numbers for substantial gainful activity change each year. And substantial gainful activity for the blind does not apply to SSI type benefits. Okay, $1,550 a month you're allowed to earn. Trial work period is something that you are, if you work for more than 9 months and have this certain amount of income, $1,110 per month, that can potentially trigger what we call a trial work period. There are lots more information about, that kind of thing in the Red Book. I do want to talk about work incentives that can be applied at the time of the application. I've got a slide on that, and some other programs called Ticket to Work and Pass. So work incentives are a way to reduce countable income at the time of the application. If your disability requires you to have special transportation costs because you can't drive, for instance, that can reduce the amount of income that you make to try to get it under that SGA amount. You may need attendant care to help you get ready for work. So those types of things can reduce your countable income at the time of the application. Ticket to Work is a program that individuals can sign up for. It's like a vocational rehabilitation. There's a great organization not too far from our office that employs people through the Voc Rehab program to fill bottles for restaurants and things like that, or make cards or string beads and do things like that. And it helps them also with, employment, getting ready for employment and other types of employment. You can keep your cash benefits, your employment, money, and your medical coverage as you try to transition to the workplace. So there is a Ticket to Work helpline that you can call and get more information about those programs in your area. A Plan to Achieve Self-Support is another program where an SSI recipient can put money aside to pursue a work goal. You can put money aside for things like education and vocational training, assistive technology, money to even start a business. And the trial work period is, again, something where you can work for like 9 months and not have it count against your SSDI. So again, the Red Book is a good resource for these types of things. They used to have a liaison in the Social Security offices, but after the pandemic, it's my understanding that went away and has probably not come back. So just to know that, you know, people like sometimes to try to work, and it is possible to work a little bit. So one of the requirements also, again, after you've now, Social Security says, okay, we agree that this person is disabled, can no longer work, and substantial gainful employment or activity, then they're going to look at your insured status. So like me, I work, my wages, I have deductions coming out of my wages every pay period. And that's going towards Social Security retirement. I'm going to get a 1 credit for every $1,730 in covered earnings for a max of 4 credits a year. So as we work and pay into the system, we can earn up to 4 credits every year. To be insured, you have to meet both a duration work test and a recent work test. So what does that mean? You know, a lot of people think that you cannot get Social Security disability if you have not worked 10 years, a total of 20 or 40 credits. That's not necessarily true, and it doesn't have to be within 10 years. Immediately before your disability. So it depends on how old you are. If you are 31 or older, in general, you do need 20 credits at that point within 10 years immediately before your disability. So if you haven't worked for, 15 years, you're probably not going to be able to get disability. The government's going to say, well, you haven't been working anyway. So the credits have to be within the 10-year period right before your disability. Now, these numbers change depending on how old you are. If you're only 24 years old, you're only going to need 6 credits in a 3-year period ending when the disability starts. So again, these are tables that you can find in the Social Security information. Now, the big thing too is duration. So how long have I worked? If I'm only 46 when I become disabled, the number of credits that I need to be considered to be insured is 24. And 20 of those have to be within the last 10 years. And these are all from the tables. These are just examples. So if I'm 60 when I become disabled, I will have had to have earned 38 credits, which is about 9.5 years, of which of the 38 credits, 20 have to be within the last 10 years. So you can see there's tables. It's not always just have to have had, 40 credits. Depends on how old you are when you become disabled. This is the summary of the SSDI. So you're 18 or older, you've met the definition of being the adult definition of being disabled or blind. The benefits are based on the worker paying into the system and having enough work credits to be considered insured. We just talked about that. There are no income or asset requirements to collect SSDI because you've paid into the system. So if Elon Musk, for example, became disabled, even though he's very wealthy, he could still collect SSDI because he's paid into the system. I'm assuming he's paid into the system. Again, the payment amount is based on your earnings, and you're going to receive Medicare after 2 years of disability benefits. The exception to that would be if you have Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, or end-stage renal disease, you will be able to receive Medicare without waiting, so immediately. Now, people ask, what happens when I reach full retirement age? The Social Security disability amount pretty much remains the same generally when you reach full retirement age. So your SSDI will convert over to regular Social Security, but the amount should remain the same. You may run across your wards or clients who have something called the Disabled Adult Child Benefit. That's part of SSDI program, and we're going to talk about why somebody might be able to collect under that benefit. This is, again, for somebody 18 or older. To collect under this benefit, you have to have been disabled prior to the age of 22 and have an insured parent. And the insured parent has to meet one of the 3 requirements here, either be receiving Social Security retirement. So you're disabled prior to the age of 22, and maybe you're on SSI, and now your insured parent starts collecting Social Security retirement. You would be able to switch over to this benefit. Or the parent is receiving disability benefits themselves, or you have a deceased parent who had worked enough to qualify for Social Security. So I see this a lot. I see a developmentally disabled individual who's 40 years old and they've been collecting SSI, and now their parent passes away. That person can start collecting under the parent's record. And with that, the benefit changes to SSDI. And they get Medicare after 2 years. Now, if the person is collecting under the insured parent and the insured parent loses eligibility, the disabled child will also lose the eligibility. So under SSDI, there's a 5-month waiting period. Your first benefit will be paid for the 6th month after the date of disability. If you became disabled, for example, on January 15th, the Social Security, when they send you a letter and say, okay, we're determined that you've been disabled, and we're saying it's as of January 15th, 2024, okay? The initial payment for your disability will be for the month of July, and it will be made in August. So they don't pay you for the first 6 months. The retroactive payments may be made back to August if the approval takes longer. It generally does take longer than 6 months to get approved. So if it takes 18 months to get approved, they're going to pay you back for 12 months, for instance, back to your six months after your onset date. Again, there's exceptions with ALS. With SSI, there is no waiting period. So if you qualify for SSI, which we're going to talk about next, there's no waiting period for collecting benefits. This is SSDI, Title II benefits. Why is it that sometimes you think somebody should be collecting these benefits and they're not on? Well, they could be imprisoned for a felony. Sometimes they're collecting workers' compensation and there's an offset. So Sometimes you can collect both, but there's an offset, and the SSDI would be either reduced or eliminated for the time period that you're collecting workman's comp. Another reason would be beneficiary is an auxiliary on the record of somebody who's become ineligible, or the survivor murdered the wage earner. And potentially SSDI could be not paid because the condition would not be disabling if the substance abuse stopped. So they don't want to actually pay for direct disability based on direct drug or alcohol use. This is the SSI slide, supplemental security income for adults. Again, this is a needs-based welfare program. So you're either aged 65 or older, blind or disabled. So under the age of 65, you have to meet that definition of being disabled in order to collect SSI. There are some adults that are 65 or older that are on SSI because their Social Security record wasn't high enough to pay this $943. But generally, those are the rules for the SSI. U.S. citizen or a qualified non-citizen, and you don't have enough work credits to be considered to be insured. So if you're under 65 and disabled, and haven't paid into the system enough to be considered to be insured, that's when they're going to put you on the SSI as long as you meet the income and the asset requirements. The government says they're going to pay you this year. The rate changes every year. $943 if you are an individual. If you are a couple, they are going to limit what the payment can be to the two people, $1,415. There are some states that add a state benefit. I know I have some beneficiaries in New York, for instance, where New York actually supplements, they give another like $200 or something towards a payment to help with expenses. If you get $1 in SSI, you are entitled to Medicaid. So here's the chart. Again, the 943 is what it's called the federal benefit rate. That's the income. You must keep your income below that amount. So if for some reason you're getting a pension or an annuity or something like that, that's gonna, count towards this income limit, and potentially not, make you disqualified. Your countable assets need to be below $2,000. In Florida, generally, like for our Medicaid, a house does not count as long as it's less than $600,000 to $700,000, and one car does not count. You need to verify, kind of what counts on the federal level, but generally you can have a house and a car, but just about everything else is going to count towards that $2,000 limit. We've been talking about adult disability. Now I want to talk about childhood disability. This is for people under the age of 18. There is a different definition for disability for under 18. It is that you have a medical determinable physical or mental impairment that results in marked and severe functional limitations. And the impairment's expected to last at least 12 months or result in death. So note that they're not looking at, can you work in substantial gainful activity? They're looking at your marked and severe functional limitations when you're under 18. There is a compassionate allowances list, again, for certain conditions. However, you must meet the income and the resource limits to qualify for benefits if you're under 18. And these limits are based on the family household. So there is a table. It's a different table than what we've been looking at. It's called a Social Security deeming table, and they're going to count the family members' income and resources that are in the household. So there are many, many children under the age of 18 with developmental disabilities that cannot collect SSI because their parents make too much money. If the person is on SSI, generally they can receive they should be able to receive the Medicaid. There is a redetermination that needs to happen at the age of 18. Because remember, the definition changes. And once you hit 18, your parents' income no longer counts. I have a couple slides on developmental disabilities. It is a very common thing, more common than a lot of people think. Now, each state probably has their own additional services for developmental disability persons. In Florida, we have an agency for persons with disabilities. Generally, you apply between the ages of 5 to 18 for that. There is a waiting list in Florida to get qualified for services under APD. If you're in a crisis situation, sometimes that will help you, get off the waiting list. If you are fortunate enough to get off the wait list for APD, your parents' income no longer count and you can get the Medicaid. So we have something called iBudget here in Florida. And what this does is, in addition to the Medicaid that the child can get, they also get care and assistance. Okay, so it provides some additional services in the home, which can really be helpful to these types of individuals. There is a qualification process to get these benefits. It does provide some things like life skills, supplies and equipment, personal supports like companion care, and therapies and things like that, some transportation, and you get a waiver support coordinator. So it is very important to understand in your state what your additional services and benefits may be for the persons with the disabilities. Now, when somebody turns 18, let's say they were disabled prior to age 18 and but now they turn age 18, they are considered an adult. They should reapply for SSI. The parent's household income and resources no longer count. And also, if you're collecting SSI, you need that redetermination to keep collecting, and it's going to establish your disability for that DAC benefit. Remember, to get the disabled adult child benefit, you have to be disabled prior to the age of 22. So some people can't get it, when they're under 18 because of income and resources of the parents. So it's really important to, when somebody turns 18, there's a lot of things to consider. Reapply for the disability and consider guardianship or conservatorship, because, once you're 18, who can make those healthcare decisions? If you, the disabled person, cannot make them, who has legal authority for healthcare, for financial decisions. And so, each state's a little bit different in how they go about. In Florida, we call it guardianship. If you have a developmental disability, you don't have to go through a court process of being determined to be disabled. So it's a little bit easier. But even if it's not a developmental disability, again, you can still apply. All right, so transitioning from SSI to SSDI. This happens, if you're getting the childhood disability benefit, start collecting under a parent's record. Sometimes you might lose your Medicaid. So, let's say you're 40 years old, your parents has passed away, and now you're moving from SSI to SSDI. So you got to keep that Medicaid. But sometimes the coding gets messed up and things like that. And I hear it quite a bit, really. So you are supposed to be able to keep your Medicaid when you convert over, okay? But your income and resources still need to stay within that Medicaid limit, the $2,000 to keep the Medicaid. So you're going to convert over, you're going to be collecting SSDI now under the parents' record. You're going to keep your Medicaid as long as you keep your assets below $2,000 and you don't have additional income. This is all documented in the Social Security Act. And if you lose the Medicaid in Florida, our Medicaid is managed by the DCF office. And so there's a process for contacting them to try to get it back. It's called SSI Protected Medicaid, basically. Okay. So here are some reasons why someone may not get their SSI benefit. They may have excess income and resources. So they've got an inheritance. They've started, collecting some kind of annuity or something like that. And that would definitely cause them to lose the SSI benefit. If they are residing in a public institution, so in like a nursing home, something like that, the SSI payment's going to go down substantially or be eliminated. Benefit recipient is incarcerated for more than 30 days, or you lose the U.S. residency status. So those are some reasons why someone might potentially lose their SSI. We've talked about a lot of differences today and things about the program. So I put a chart together for you that compares the 3 different programs, the SSI, SSDI, and the Disabled Adult Child Benefit. So you can kind of see it all at once, what the age limits are. Do you need the medical diagnosis for disability? Again, look at SSI over 65. No, you don't. If you're just an older person and you haven't worked, enough to be considered to be insured, you may be able to collect a small an amount of benefit up to the 943. And let's say you worked a little bit and maybe when you hit your normal retirement age, your benefit of Social Security is going to be $400. Well, you could potentially get another $543 if your assets and income, or the assets are under 2,000. So sometimes you'll see somebody with a combination too. So this is your chart that you can refer back to. This is a slide that talks about what, the two programs have in common. They're all of these are titles, that's the legal code. They're both administered by Social Security Administration. They have an identical appeal process. Both use the same definition of disability and retirement. And some recipients, like I've said before, are eligible for both. Social Security will only pay the dual eligible persons the greater of the two benefits or the total of the two. So I gave you that example, $943 is the max amounts. If your Social Security is $600, you could potentially get another, $343 in SSI. Here's the phone number for Social Security and their website for applying. You will need to, if you apply online, create a Social Security account. They really want people to apply online. They will ask, is this application also an application for SSI? It's recommended that you say yes, because if they will then consider SSI as an option if you don't meet the other requirements for being insured to collect under your own record. If it's for an SSI applicant, there will also be a phone interview. I do have a couple examples. John, age 60. He got in a car accident when he was 50 and was paralyzed from the waist down, could no longer work. He's got diabetes, COPD, and some high blood pressure. John was a car mechanic for 25 years until his accident, and he had collected savings of about $30,000. No longer being able to work, he applied for Social Security disability soon after his accident. So what type of benefit would he potentially get? It's going to be the SSDI because he had worked, he met the insured status, he paid into the system, and so based on his work record, he is going to receive $1,900 a month in SSDI. He's not going to collect SSI because, again, he paid into the system, and he's wasn't disabled prior to the age of 22, so it's not the DAC benefit. And now, what type of health insurance would John receive? So after 2 years of being on the SSDI, based on his date of eligibility, he would get a letter saying, John, now you're going to be getting Medicare next month, okay? After it takes 2 years. So, unfortunately, people in this situation sometimes have a problem with what kind of insurance, can I get? Can I afford COBRA insurance, which is usually very expensive? Maybe insurance through the exchange he could qualify for. Will John be able to get Medicaid under his situation with having $30,000 in savings? No. Medical Medicaid in Florida, you can only have about $5,000 in assets. And he's not going to get APD services. Now, we help a lot of people like John by opening up a pooled trust where he could put his excess resources and potentially excess income every month also. So we do actually help a lot of people with our pooled special needs trust to qualify for Medicaid sometimes in this situation to help him get the health care that he needs. Now, Alice, this is our second example. She's 30 and she's had cerebral palsy since birth, has some mild seizures, cannot work. She lives with her parents, who are bankers and attorneys. She has no savings of her own. What kind of benefits would Alice be entitled to? So at the age of 18, she applied and was entitled to the SSI benefit, because before that age, her parents' income was counting. She couldn't get SSI. Now, 18, parents' income no longer counts. So she can now collect that $943 a month. It's not going to be SSDI because she had no work record. Health insurance, Medicaid, yes, she's going to get her SSI, so that means that she will get Medicaid. APD services, iBudget, yes, if she can get off the wait list in Florida. Again, those are those extra services. There's no Medicare for her at this point. She is only collecting SSI with Medicaid. Now, what happens when Alice's parent retires or passes away? In my example, the parent retires, her SSI is going to switch to SSDI through that disabled adult child benefit, right? She's going to keep her Medicaid as long as her assets stay with under $2,000. She has no other income. And the Medicare is going to start 2 years after the DAC benefit. So again, her SSI switches to SSDI. She keeps her Medicaid. And then in 2 years, she adds Medicare. So at that point, she would have Medicare and Medicaid. Great way to have health insurance for persons with disabilities. This is the chart that our Department of Children and Families puts out for Medicaid for the aged and disabled. These have our different programs for nursing homes, for community Medicaid, for the SSI, all sorts of different, and the Medicare savings programs. There's your SSI and all. This chart changes every 3 months. Or gets published every 3 months. Each state might have, their own chart and calculate the requirements just slightly differently. This is my chart. I always have to put a slide in about special needs trust because that's my passion, is helping to manage special needs trust. You have these are legal ways to title your assets to have them not count for Medicaid, whether you're over the income limit or the asset limit. A special needs trust can be used to reduce your countable income and your assets to qualify for Medicaid. And so we help a lot of people. Let's say someone is on Medicaid and they get an inheritance, $30,000. In Florida, we can do a pooled special needs trust to help that individual keep their Medicaid benefits. And everyone throughout the country can make sure that if you know an adult that has a child or loved one with a disability, if they want to leave that loved one money, they should do their planning with an attorney and leave it inside a third-party special needs trust. So I thank you for listening to our program today. And for some reason, let's see if I can get my Q&A up.
I was going to say, Sharon, I heard your chat drop off. Hi, guys. This is Julie. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Aged. I'll catch you up on some of the questions that were happening and kind of circle back to a few things. Charlene happened to mention that Title II includes retirement and survivors, but does not require disability, is what her comment was. So it was just more of a comment. Laura had a question though. She said, is there a resource limit? And you've already kind of answered it, but to circle back, is there a resource limit with regards to savings when on SSDI for somebody who lives independently without SHS services?
Good question. The answer to that is no. SSDI is not a means tested program. You've already paid into the system, so you can collect that SSDI no matter how much money you have.
Great. Chick wanted to know, do you happen to know what the family income dollar amount income limit is for a disabled child under 18?
No, I do not. There are tables based on the number of people in the household. And you have to just kind of look up that table.
And then we had some comments. People are saying this was really great information. They were very happy to hear this information and hear the speech. We had people talking about different ways that their clients stopped, you know, their SSI stopped or different benefits stopped. A lot of it was because of incarceration or some of the examples you gave in the presentation. So Chick also wanted to know, do people who are on SSDI, do they get Medicare benefits, Part A and Part B?
Yes, after 2 years, yes, they do. It's Part A and B. They have to pay for that. You know, Part A is generally free. Part B this year is $174.70. So that will be deducted from the SSDI payment every month.
And we had a question too about special needs trust. So Hillary wants to know if as a guardian, she creates a pooled trust, is that considered a first party created or a third party created?
So the first party trust, if it is your ward's money going into the trust, that's a first party trust. And there is Medicaid payback when that person dies. If it's somebody else's money going into a trust for the disabled person, that's a third party trust, somebody else's money going in.
Great. And it looks like lots of people would like copies of the slides, so we'll make sure we get those to Luke so you guys can have what you need. And then it looks like Charlene had a comment. She said the first year a retiree draws SSDI is impacted by wages they get that year, so you need to be aware of the limit before the impact. So, and that looks like all, otherwise it's just conversation about what's been happening with their clients and different ways. They did say they strongly encourage guardians to notify your Social Security office when your client moves to a new residential location. If you fail to do so, they may suspend the client's SSA or SSI benefits. So that sounds like a helpful tip.
Yeah, that's true. It can change, definitely. And I encourage you to become familiar with the Medicaid, programs in your state, because they can often enhance benefits for persons with disabilities. So, like even when you're on SSDI, if you have Medicare, we do a lot of dual eligible Medicare, Medicaid here in Florida, and our pooled trust can be used when someone's income's too high to qualify on their own. They can run the excess income through the trust, and it's really a great way to get the person's cost of medications down and co-pays down to zero. So any help these people can get is very helpful. And as a guardian, you should, I encourage you to really educate yourself, work with an attorney that understands elder law and Medicaid benefits, so you can make sure your clients are getting everything they're entitled to.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sharon, so much for being here. A lot of great information, and thank you, Julie, as well. And then I'll make sure we'll get those slides up on the platform. A platform will be available for 30 days following the conference. And then so if you can't gather all of the materials from the different speakers, you'll still have up to 30 days to get that information. So after lunch, we're going to go into with Fran Piekarski, how to be guardian to someone with a hoarding disorder. And so we'll jump into that, and it'll be officially the fourth quarter of this conference when we come back. So we'll see you at 12:30. Thanks again, Sharon.
You're welcome. Thank you.